Monday. I pray that you're having an amazing Monday. How about we start this week blessed, full of joy, knowing exactly what we're focused on. We've written down affirmations and all of that, right? Because we got to reclaim our Mondays. I'm certainly reclaiming my Mondays. So I hope that you are too. Everyone, I'm Dr. Wanita Mercer. I am the founder and chief heart leader at Lead My Heart Coaching and Consulting. But you know what? When I come with these responses, also consider me your workplace revival ace, okay? And today we are talking about quiet quitting and firing. It has been all over the headlines, and I've been kind of waiting it out to kind of see what more would kind of come of it before I kind of jumped in and provided my 2 cents. But this is that needs to be addressed. And I thought that this was the great opportunity for me to share some suggestions and recommendations for both leaders and employers, employees in the workplace, but also tell you a little bit more about myself, what I do, and how my company can help. And so, you know what I want you to do? I want you to engage with me, okay? Let me know that you're here. Like this video, heart the video, share it on your timeline. Also, tag some people, share, let people know that they need to check this out. Um, this is information that everyone can use, okay? Leaders, current leaders, emerging leaders, employees, no matter what your role is, no matter what company you're working in, no matter what industry, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about some very important issues that I know that somehow or another you're dealing with, okay? So tag people, comment, let me know that you're here, say hello, that you're watching, ask any questions that you have, and I'll do my best to address them, okay? And then, of course, also react. Let me know. Do you love what I'm saying? Heart, heart, heart. If you don't like it, you know, thumbs down, sad faces. I don't care because you know what? Regardless, I'm going to say what needs to be said. And honestly, I don't always like what I have to say either, but it's important, right? And sometimes the biggest changes and transformations come from the most difficult topics and things that we have to address ourselves. So let's get to this, y'all. So let's first talk about this whole idea of quiet, hiring and firing, quitting and firing, there's so much going on. We have the great resignation that's happening. I was reading an article that talked about that like 4 million people quit their job this month. What? You know? That is crazy. And so it's something that is going on, y'all, that we have to address. We know it's happening. It's kind of almost becoming something that you just expect, but we're not really stopping to ask the question why and have these thoughtful and meaningful discussions. And we have to do that. We also have the worker qualification roles that's happening right now where you're not really seeing the type of qualifications and experience that you want to have as you're hiring people into your organization. So, as people are up and quitting, your employers are really struggling to find qualified people to fill those roles. And that is a big problem. And then we also have the labor shortage. And I did a response video talking about the teacher shortage and all of that that's going on there. Um, but y'all, it's like you go places and everyone has a sign that sorry, forgive us, pardon us, we're short on staff, you know? And then it really makes a poor impression on customers. It makes a poor impression on your stakeholders and people who are trying to build relationships with you and partnerships with you in your business. So it really does have bigger effects than just, we can't hire people, right? And then you have the remote work wars. Oh my gosh, where you have this whole idea of employers wanting workers to come back to work, to be physically present because they think that's the only way people can work. And we know that data does not necessarily support that, right? Um, But still, okay, they want people back in the workplace, and there's still this idea that people don't want to be there. Maybe because their circumstances have changed significantly during the pandemic. Maybe because they actually do find that they're more productive at home, right? And like that flexibility that remote work provides. Um, or maybe they just still don't feel safe, right? Because we also have to admit that we're still in a pandemic. And still, people are dealing with a lot of anxiety regarding going back into the workplace and being around people. You may not want to admit that. You may not want to address it. But the fact is, it's still happening. And so we have to be able to talk about these things. So then we add this whole, quiet quitting and quiet firing. And you see more talk about the quiet quitting, but I'm also going to address quiet firing because I'm not the one to try to take a side for just employees or just the leaders or executives, but there has to be some acknowledgement on both sides, right, as to what roles or should I say, what role that both play in the issue. Okay, and so we're going to talk about both today, and these two different point of views, because first with quiet quitting, all right, from the employee's perspective, let's first talk about what it is. It is the employee doing the task of, working within the parameters of their job description. Okay. The job description that the company wrote for them. Um, it's this idea that the employee is actually doing their job and nothing more. Okay. But the reason that is referred to as quiet quitting is because at some point, they were doing a lot more. They were actually putting in the extra hours. They had no problem working on the weekends. They had no problem taking on extra projects, right? They really did work with a high level of performance and excellence. And that was kind of the norm for them. But because now, right, they're seeing a reverse, and as they seeing the employers are seeing that employees are kind of taking a step back, not willing to take on as many projects, not willing to work the extra hours. Now they're calling it quiet quitting. But from the employee, their perspective is I'm simply establishing healthy boundaries. Okay, and think about that. They're establishing healthy boundaries between work life and their personal life, right? They're actually kind of equalizing the pay scale here because they no longer want to not get, do extra work and not get paid. Well, from the employer's perspective, they shouldn't want people to work more than what they're actually getting paid to do. But we know that that doesn't always happen. Okay. And so, what is really happening here is people are choosing to do the job that they were hired for. But from the employer's perspective, quiet quitting is, they're not a team player anymore. Oh, they're not wanting to take on all this extra work that is required for them to do their job. Well, is it? Because if it were, then that would have been in the job description, right? And so we have to see this from both sides that, what are we really talking about here with quiet quitting? Because what it seems like is though people come in with really high expectations for employees to do much more than what the contract stipulates that their tasks and duties are and their responsibilities, but also much more than what their pay, their salary warrants, right? And so we have to acknowledge that we do. But when we also talk about quiet firing, okay, what's happening here is that it's very passive aggressive, where both of these approaches are. But what's happening is that the employer is intentionally creating circumstances in which an employee chooses to quit their job rather than the employer taking the proper steps and following the standard procedures for performance evaluations, right? To terminate them if needed. Yeah. I've seen this a lot happen in the workplace. I've been in on these conversations where, administrators and executives are literally talking about, you know, we're not going to give them this project. Or, if we ask them to work all these extra hours, even though we really don't want them to, as long as they say they don't do it and we can notate that we asked, then we can make it seem like they're not fulfilling the job, that they're not doing um, their share of the load. And so they're creating, okay, intentionally, deliberately creating circumstances where they're hoping, they're praying, they're wishing, they're desiring for the employee to quit. Okay. So basically, they're firing them, not really, but that's where the whole quiet firing comes from. But let's look at the different perspective here. Um, from the employee's perspective, they're feeling ostracized, they're feeling rejected, they're feeling as if their work is not up to par, they're feeling like they're not accepted, that they're not a part of the organization. They're wondering why they're being overlooked. Why is it that, I'm doing good work, no one's telling me I'm doing bad work, right? And that's important to know. No one's really telling you probably that you're doing poor work or underperforming, but you're not getting the same opportunities as your colleagues. Okay, something is different. You're not being treated fairly. Okay. But from the employer's perspective, they're saying, we have to get rid of this person somehow. They're not a good fit. They're not doing things in the way we would like them to be done. They don't necessarily work well with the team, yada, yada, yada. So many different things here. But they want that employee to no longer be working there so that they can hire someone who is going to be more of a team player, who is going to be a better organizational fit. And I know we don't like to talk about that word, but it exists, it's real, it's important. But we get so caught up on total inclusion that sometimes we miss that special ingredient of good organizational fit to values, the mission, the vision of what people are doing and why that matters. Okay, so we've talked about these two different point of views for quiet quitting and quiet firing. Now let's get to the heart of this because the reality here is that 21% of workers are quietly quitting. Okay, right now. Um, and this is important to know because in the midst of the great resignation, and I mentioned this also with the teacher shortage. See, I think a lot of leaders are still under the impression that the people who are in front of you, who are showing up to work every day, actually want to be there. And I think it's wrong to assume that, right? You're assuming they're actually doing their best work when they probably could do a whole lot more to benefit your company and help move it in the direction that you want them to, but they're quiet quitters. So you don't know that, right? These are the people who would rather be somewhere else, who really are just kind of hanging out, making it work until something better comes along. And that can be detrimental to your organizational goals. It truly can be. And so this is something that we must address. But why now? Right? Well, if you're not familiar with how this all got started, it kind of became a popular trend on TikTok with Generation Z employees kind of speaking out about how they're not going to be overworking anymore. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. They're taking back control of their life, which is okay, right? It's good to have good balance and to take control back, but it's the way that you do it that matters. I'm a big believer of that that we all have to work together and be cognizant of how our behaviors, our decisions affect other people, right, as a whole. And so When we talk about why now, we can also talk about, again, of course, the great resignation of what's happening with employees. That's why it's a big topic. Um, but also think about what's happened in these last few years. I mean, very few years. I mean, 2 years is kind of flown by. But when you think about maybe like the last about 3 years, you've had the resignation, of course. We've had the pandemic that really um, did a whammy, right, on the organizations and just really still trying to heal in the midst of all of that. We also had the Me Too movement that, yes, dealt with a lot of personal trauma, but also dealt with a lot of workplace traumas as well regarding sexual harassment and abuse. Also workplace violence, y'all, and shootings. We can't overlook that, right? Because when we talk about shootings at schools, when we talk about shootings at the grocery stores, when we talk about shootings at the gym, these are workplaces, right? And things that are happening in places where people work every single day and give so much of their life to. Think about the ultimatums. I did a response to Elon Musk's ultimatum and Netflix's ultimatums, right? Basically telling employees that we're no longer willing to lead. We just want to, create the circumstances where you choose to leave yourself. Not so much quiet firing because they are making a very bold statement about it, but it is nonetheless this still passive aggressiveness of that I'm no longer taking responsibility as a leader for what's happening. I'm putting it on the employee. Um, and then we also have, gosh, burnt out CEOs, burnt out employees, the massive teacher shortage. I've talked about that. But think about the burnout of essential workers as well. That really keeps our economy going. So you know what? In the midst of all of this, even if y'all aren't ready to do it, I'm ready to do it. And that is to declare a state of emergency in the workplace because enough is enough already. Enough is enough. Um, I'm tired of people being crushed. I'm tired of people crying in the workplace. That was my office. My office was the one that people came to lock the door and cry because of the adult bullying that was taking place, because the abuse that was taking place, because of the intimidation and all of that that was taking place in the work. Right? Just yesterday, I was talking to a young lady about her work experience, and she left her former employer. And when I asked her what that was like, she literally broke out in tears. I was like, this is crazy. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. And this is exactly what it is that I am addressing. And I am completely disrupting this idea of toxic workplaces because of passive or otherwise aggressions, right? That are causing people to truly be crushed in the workplace. Y'all, the workplace is no place to die. And yet every day people's spirits are being crushed because the fact is work, organizations, leaders, the way you've put together your mission and vision, it is not nurturing the human spirit. And I know that sounds real touchy-feely. Some of you don't like it. It makes you uncomfortable. But this is the fact. Humans are spirit, right? We like to call it the heart because the heart is something that we're a little bit more comfortable with. But when you use the word spirit, then people begin to get a little bit uncomfortable. But the fact is, we are spiritual beings, and it's our spirit that connects us. It's our spirit that makes us understand that things are bigger than just us, that everything we do, every decision that we make, and the reasons why we do them matter because it affects everyone around us, right? And it impacts the the things that we're able to do, right? And to really make a difference in the world. And so we have to acknowledge the spirit of the human being and what is happening to it in these toxic environments, right? And until we do that and acknowledge the fact that people as humans, that spirit that we have, y'all, it desires two things: calling, engagement, meaning you have a sense of purpose of why you exist, why you need to be a part of something, why you matter, why you make a difference. We desire to know and understand that. And when we don't, it crushes us. We get into depression, anxiety, right? Our health is at risk. It affects everything else, our relationships, our happiness, our joy, when we don't have a sense of why we're here, right? And doing something meaningful with our life. And then the second thing that all spirits desire is that whole idea of community and membership, being a part of something, right? Knowing that you're connected to something, you're included, that when people think about that group, they think about you too, right? That you know that you're a part of something bigger and mightier and stronger than yourself because you're doing it together. We exist to be in relationship with each other. And so when these two things are um, forgotten, not acknowledged, neglected in the workplace, these are the kind of things that you see happening: the resignation, the shortages, the people leaving, the aggressions, right? So, how do we address that? We have to lead the heart. we have to. We have to lead the heart. And that's what, lead my heart is all about. Okay. Leading the heart. But how do we do that? Well, as you can see, it's an acronym. And we lead by loving, educating, affirming, and delivering. Okay. We have to love people. I know that makes you uncomfortable to think about loving people in the workplace. We understand loving people in our personal lives. We understand loving people at our churches. We understand loving people in nonprofit, right? In our communities. But as soon as we start talking about the workplace, it's like, I don't know about that. I don't think we're here to love. Well, I'll tell you what, if you want love in your life, you better embrace it at work, because that's where you're going to spend most of your waking hours, at work, with your leaders, with your team, with your colleagues. The other third of your life, asleep. And then the other third, you're sharing that somewhere between what you have to do to stay alive, like eat, right, and drink water, grooming, fun activities, taking care of your family, right? All of those things share that time. But you'll spend the majority of your waking hours at work. Don't you want love in your life? Right? Don't you want to lead in a way that people know that you love them? But don't you also want to feel loved, right? And cared for, thought of? Absolutely. Right? So love, that is a word that belongs in the workplace because it belongs in your life. You don't start living once you leave work. You're you're supposed to live at work as well, to drive. You have to educate, right? You have to train. You have to teach people, right? You have to impart to them, develop them. How else will they learn and grow, right? In the way that's going to help them to be better human beings, better employees. Okay. We also have to affirm people. Affirm. We have to give them constructive feedback. We have to let them know that they're doing a great job, congratulate them, right? We have to give them their props when they're due. We also have to defend them, though. We have to take up for people, right? We have to validate the fact that they are a part of our organization. They are a part of the team. They are a member here, right? Validate their purpose, validate their calling, validate the things that they're great at. And then we also have to deliver. We have to make good on our word. We have to do what we say we're going to do. We have to execute. Why? Why is that important? Because execution, fulfilling your word and your commitment helps to build trust. And trust is the foundation of every great relationship. Now, sometimes that has to start with a contract, right? Because even though you don't know each other, you can't really trust each other. But by having a mutual agreement, you begin to develop a sense of trust, right? But either way, we have to deliver. So lead the heart, love, educate, affirm, and deliver people. Okay. But then also, what does the heart stand for? What is our spirit made of? As human beings, we have to realize that we're habits. We are our disciplines. We are the things that we do every single day, the things that we strive to develop, that we focus on. That's what we're made of. We're made of our experiences, right? The good and the bad, right? Are the things that we've endured, the things that we've overcome, the things that we strive for, that we look forward to. We are also our affections, the things that we admire, the things that we love, the things that we enjoy and make us happy, right? And in learning, how do we tap into that? To the things that people actually enjoy doing. We also are our responsibilities. What are we accountable for doing? Not only in our personal life, but at work, right? What are our roles? What duties and tasks do we have to fulfill? Because that's what people are concerned about. How do they fulfill their responsibilities? And so if you're infringing on that with the things and the way that you're making expectations, and what you're asking of people, you're going to crush them, right? Because that matters to us, what our responsibilities and our roles are. And then lastly, we're our traumas. We're our torments. We are our triggers, right? We love to talk about all the good things when it comes to the workplace, but when we acknowledge that we're spirit, we also had acknowledged the kind of the bad things that we have to deal with as well. And that is, we all have some growing to do. We all have weaknesses that we're looking to develop, right? And work on. And there are things that have been traumatic in our lives, our work lives, our personal lives, that we're still having to overcome. One of the things I mentioned, um, um, not so much as a trauma, but certainly an issue or an insecurity is another thing that I would put there, pin there, as things that people are dealing with, is the fact that the same children who weren't reading on level and struggled in school, well, guess what? They didn't disappear when they graduated. They're adults now who struggle to read or maybe comprehend what they're reading, right? And how to interpret that. So whereas you're saying, "Oh gosh, this person, they just every time we ask them to read something, right? They act like it's not important, or they find a reason to get out of it, or they shy away from sharing out." How do we know that, you know, the people that we're working with and depending on to be able to have certain skills, right? That they don't struggle with that, right? So it really is near and dear to my heart that we learn to do this well, that you don't lead people based on who you hope they will be, that on the things that you hope they'll do, or your high expectations for them. But we learn to lead people where they are, who they are right now, what their makeup is. And we lead that. We lead that person, right? Not all these ideals, but we start with people are. So here's some suggestions and recommendations to employees, okay? Because what thing I don't want to happen is that you really push this whole quitting quietly and you settle into a mediocre mindset. Oh gosh, I've talked about it before. Um, Underperforming really isn't the issue when it comes to the workplace, because underperformance can be coached. You just don't have the right models. You may not have the right skills, but we can train that. I can coach you on that. I can develop you on that. But mediocrity, this idea that you're okay just doing the minimum, that is a mindset, right? That is a heart issue. And so the desire should be to work at excellence, regardless of what your circumstances are. And this is coming from someone who knows what it's like to have the most horrible working circumstances, and you still say, but I know who I am. I'm going to work in excellence and I'm going to find a way to work in the midst of all of this and not allow my circumstances to change my character. Yeah, right? Because I am committed to working in excellence. So even in the midst of your employer is asking so much more of you, a person who wants to work in excellence says, I have to find a way to talk to my supervisor about this, about the concerns that I have, right? A person who's working in excellence will still say, even though I'm only going to be working outside, I'm not working outside my work hours anymore, I'm not staying late anymore. How can I develop the discipline of time management? Right? How can I better work with my colleagues and my coworkers to continue to work at excellence? Right? That I'm not slacking, that I'm not making excuses for why I can't do and perform at the level that I need to for my organization and my team members and me, right? So that is something that I would encourage you as employees to do is to take better leadership of yourself. And I call that heartpreneurship. Heartpreneurship is when you really say, I'm leading my own heart, right? I'm starting where I am, and I'm committed to being the best person that I can be in this situation, under these circumstances. How can I still work in excellence? Right? And really take the initiative, be proactive in those difficult conversations, right? So that you can still make your work situation better. Okay. And I always say this too, and this is so needed in this moment. Start how you want to finish. Start how you want to finish. Even if it's a new relationship, start how you want to finish. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. Right? And even going to a new organization and starting a new job, that's starting a new relationship, right? Start how you want to finish. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. Don't say you like things when you really don't because you're just trying to get the guy or get the girl, right? You're just trying to get that job. Be who you truly are, right? And it's so important to establish healthy boundaries at the beginning of a work relationship than later on. Okay, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that employees make starting a new job that will help with this whole idea of getting to the point where you have to quietly quit because you gave way too much in the beginning, and then your supervisors got set in that expectation of you, and now that you're starting to pull back, it's like, what's going on? Right? Rather than saying, gosh, you know what? There have been some changes in my personal life where that I'm having to give a much more energy to in this season of my life. How can we work together to make sure that I can still perform at a high level, but you also be more understanding that my work hours or the extra that I'm able to do have to change a little bit, right? Because let me tell you, it's much easier to have a chicken coop and let chickens out one by one than to have had them free and now you have to go round them all up. Okay, so start with your coop, your cage, and slowly let your chickens out. Okay, don't let them run free. And then also focus on your purpose. Okay, it's so important that you focus on your call. And that has always helped me in difficult circumstances in the workplace is to remember who I am and what my purpose is, and to find ways to actively engage in that purpose at work and to create opportunities for me to engage in that. I didn't leave it up to my supervisor to tell me how I was going to operate in my purpose. What? No way. I'm not giving people that kind of power. No, I would seek opportunities, right? I know what my purpose is. I know the things that I'm great at. I know my capacity, right? And so I would go to my supervisors and say, listen, this is a unique opportunity for us to do this that will help us achieve organizational goals as well. And I feel like I could be the one to lead it. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, this is exactly what I want to do. And I'll have more fun doing this than the other stuff. But it was the way I found my joy, but also was working in alignment with organizational goals. Okay. So that's my advice to employees. Now, hey, leaders, now it's time to talk to you. Okay. Because what you're doing is sabotage, and that's unethical and it's unfair. You need to take the I square approach. And I square is be intentional and intelligent in everything that you do. But to set people up for failure is sabotage. And the people that you work with, the people that you committed to lead, they deserve better than that. Okay. And so, what I would first ask of you, if you're finding yourself in this place of sabotage and quietly firing people for whatever reason, that you remember why you became a leader. Now, see, for some of you, it might be because it was going to be a great title and a bigger paycheck. And that's already an issue. That's a heart issue, right? If that was really your intent, because if it truly wasn't to help people and help develop and nurture people, then you need to reevaluate your heart and why you do the things that you do. We all do. And I'm asking you to do it. And I'm not asking you to do something that I don't do every single day. Okay? So that's number one. Remember why you became a leader and your role and duty and responsibility to the people that you serve. And then partner with them. Don't sabotage them. Okay. Stop being passive aggressive and you have those difficult conversations and treat it like that. I think sometimes, and I gave this advice to someone who was having difficulties with one of their employees. I said, sometimes we hype up that conversation too much that causes a lot of anxiety and resentment and aggression in a way that doesn't need to be. The better you approach a difficult conversation, the better. Don't say things like, we need to talk. Right? It's the same thing like in relationships. You'd be like, as soon as someone says, we need to talk, it's like walls start getting built up. Don't do that. Keep it casual. Hey, let's talk about that meeting this morning. What did you think? I kind of saw your posture change a little bit, your body language. I would love to know what your thoughts were on that meeting that we had, right? Um, keep it light. And the way that you go into the conversation, people will respond to that. Okay? So be intelligent and intentional about your approach to these difficult conversations. And my recommendation is to keep it light and always start with, what do they think? What were their thoughts? You would love to know their opinion on how to make something better. And then that way you can always steer it back towards, they don't necessarily have to know, but their performance, right? And how you can maybe coach them on developing certain skills and things that they're falling short in. Coach the mediocre mindset. Okay. You have to coach that. Um, Train and educate the underperformer. Okay. Coach, when we're talking about coaching, we're talking about motivating, we're talking about encouraging, we're talking about helping someone to identify and evaluate what matters most to them so that they can take ownership of their actions and behaviors. Underperformers, they desire to be excellent, they just don't know how. That's easy. We'll train them, right? We'll educate them. We'll give them the model, okay, of how to do things in the way that you want them to do them to optimize their performance. No problem. Okay, so those are the two different approaches of dealing with those two different types of employees that you might be quietly quitting. I mean, firing, quietly firing. Okay. And then also, I would encourage you to utilize the evaluation infrastructure you currently have. Okay. Shout out to Gray Reed. This is a law firm here in actually Houston, I believe. Their headquarters is in Houston. They did a nice blog article on terminating employees. Yeah, right? Because if people aren't performing at the level that you want them to, they're not meeting their goals, they're not fulfilling their objectives, the only logical thing is to really get to the point where maybe you say, okay, let's terminate this relationship. Okay, let's terminate um, this job. Let's terminate this employment, right? Um, and that's not a horrible thing. It's not. It's how it's done that makes it unethical and moral and things like that, right? But they gave some really great tips on how to do that. The big issue, though, when it comes to employees that I've seen often and leaders not really utilizing the annual performance review or the annual, evaluation is the fact that you don't really document things that well. You don't document the underperformances, the um, blatant disregard for directions or instructions or protocols and procedures. You just don't document well. So by the time that you're ready to terminate someone, that person's like, "What? Why?" And then here comes a lawsuit because you haven't had the important conversations. You haven't been direct about what it is that they were slacking in. And so you kind of set yourself up to be sued in that way, that you don't utilize what you've put in place to help people develop and to become all that they are called to be and created to be, and you want them to be in the workplace. But it's also useful also for when you need to kind of determine that this just isn't the best work relationship or situation. Okay, so definitely check out that guide to employee termination. Um, but it's really just to help you establish that pathway in a more reasonable, intentional, and intelligent way. Okay. Um, and then lastly, just remember that as a leader, you don't just have the title, you just don't have the influence, but you also have the ability to motivate people to change. And I think that is the most important skill of a leader that is so often overlooked. Um, you have the ability to motivate people to change. Use that superpower that you have, right, to get people on board. I'm certainly not an advocate for quick terminations, for giving up on people, especially when you have failed to lead. Okay. And you know when you have failed to lead people. And it's time for us to own that, to be, self reflective and say, I know I can do better and commit to doing that, to being self accountable to the roles or responsibilities we have as leaders. Okay. And so that's lead my heart. And that's the message. That's what we talk about. That's what we are called to disrupt in the workplace. We deal with leadership from three different perspectives: heartpreneurship, which is how you lead yourself; executive leadership, how you lead others; and then also followership, how we help others lead us, right? Um, for maximum outcomes and performance, right? We also deal with communication strategies and change strategies, all rooted in spiritual leadership, workplace spirituality, and spiritual change readiness that looks at how do we tap into nurturing the human spirit to get the results that we want. And they're going to benefit and maximize the triple bottom line: people, the planet, and profits. Real simple, real straightforward. But the data shows that unless we really truly engage people in their sense of calling and purpose and help them understand and feel that sense of community and membership within the organization, I don't care how great your strategies are. I don't care what theories you're implementing. They will fail. They will fail. So we must engage the spirit. And so that's what spirituality is all about. It's not about religion. You don't have to be afraid of it, right? It's about that connectedness that many people do find through religion. But it's about connectedness. It's about community. It's about purpose, right? It's about knowing that you get up every morning, you know, full of something important to do, right? Full of joy, full of intent, full of focus. And that's not anything to be taken for granted. Okay. So give us a call. We would love to work with you. So go check out my website, leadmyheart.com, to learn more about me and the company. It's still being updated, still some new things coming even this week. But go check it out and reach out to me. And on social media, Lima Heart 2022. You can come check us out. But that's all for today. I hope that you enjoyed this, that you checked it out. Let me know what you thought. Questions, comments, I'm here for it. Okay. Will you all take care? Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Don't let anyone steal your joy. And I mean, no one. Okay. And remember, in everything you do and with everything you have, love God and love people. Goodbye. Take care, y'all.